Are you getting burnt out studying? Do you feel like whatever you read goes in one ear and out the other? Do you feel like no matter how many hours you put in, nothing seems to stick? While you know that studying hard is an important part of your academic life, it's getting harder and harder to resist the many temptations that technology has to offer. But there is one simple solution that can help. You can identify the specific habits the best students use and then implement them into your life. So in this video, we'll cover 7 of these habits. Now, if you enjoy the content of this video, then please help us out by taking a few seconds to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Without further ado, let's begin with the Feynman Technique. This study technique was named after the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman stated that if you can't explain something in simple terms, you actually don't understand a topic fully. The Feynman technique can be broken down into 4 easy steps. Step 1. Choose the subject that you want to learn about. Write this subject down as a heading at the top of the page. Underneath this heading, write down everything you can remember about the subject. Keep this page around so you can add to it. Step 2. Pretend you have to teach this subject. Explain the subject as though you were teaching it to someone who doesn't have much knowledge. A really good way of doing this is to use examples. For example, if you wanted to explain quantum physics, you could say something like, "Quantum physics is the observation and exploration of atoms and subatomic particles which exhibit wave-particle duality and seeks to understand why particles like electrons and protons can behave as both particles and waves." To anyone not studying physics, this makes barely any sense. In fact, you might as well be speaking another language. A simpler way of explaining this is the following. Quantum physics is a branch of physics that explores the behavior of very tiny particles like atoms and subatomic particles. It describes a strange and fascinating world that is quite different from the everyday world we experience. Step 3. Review your explanation. The explanation above could no doubt be improved. As time goes by and your understanding deepens, come back and refine your explanation. Make it as simple as possible without simplifying it too much. Step 4. Make sure your explanation can be understood by the novice. If there is too much technical jargon to grasp all at once, most people completely switch off and won't understand what you're trying to explain. Tinker with your explanation of the topic until it reaches the point that almost a child could understand what it is you're trying to explain. It's challenging to balance simplifying a topic enough without taking away the meaning and inherent complexity, but it's proof that you understand any topic in detail. Overall, the Feynman technique is a great way to understand complex topics. Now, let's move on to the other 6 habits. 2. Map your mind. Tony Buzan is an eccentric figure who believed in the almost infinite potential of the brain. He was a master of karate, a popular psychology author of several books that taught people to develop their intelligence. He was also the pioneer of a concept known as mind mapping. Mind maps are usually a sheet of paper that has the topic being studied in the middle, and then branching out from there are different ideas and subtopics that are relevant. In 2017, the Indian Journal of Community Medicine published a study showing that mind maps helped medical students, who often have the most amount of raw information to learn, have a higher knowledge base score than those who just read the text as normal. Why is this so? Tony Buzan believed that linear words on a page aren't accurate to how the brain actually thinks. If somebody says the word apple to you, you don't get a printout of the letters APPLE in your mind. You will probably picture a nice green apple, and then you might recall memories or experiences that you had with an apple, full of color, emotion, shape, and patterns. This is how your mind thinks. Creating a mind map is easy. Get yourself the following: a plain sheet of paper, it can be big or small, as many colored pens or pencils as you like, any notes and study materials for the subject. To make the mind map, write the subject in the middle of the paper. This can be as focused or as broad as you like. For example, if you're studying mathematics, you could just write math, or if you're studying the history of baked beans, you could just write baked beans history. From there, draw lines out and write down important ideas or anything that you find interesting about that topic. If you like, you can draw shapes and patterns that border anything you write about, or you can add illustrations. Some people take great pride in turning mind maps into works of art, but the only important thing is that it works for you. Draw patterns and shapes in different colors as your mind is more engaged and stimulated by this visual information. Over time, you're likely to find that you remember more and more about what you learn, and you're able to connect different parts of a subject together more easily in your mind. Your mind maps also make great memory aids because human memory works better with pictures than it does with words. Now, if you'd like to learn more about this topic, we'll include a link in the description box to an article that features 21 examples of mind maps. 3. Understand your learning style. Everyone learns and absorbs information in unique ways, and as Einstein once said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing it is stupid. We all know that one person who can absorb tons of information just by reading it, and in modern education, this is a huge advantage. But there are so many different learning styles that it can be easy to fall behind when all you need to do is adjust how you're absorbing information. There are 7 different kinds of learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, logic, verbal, social, and solitary. Most likely, you'll be a combination of the above. Understanding what you're good at helps you understand which things you'll need to apply more effort in. It might also help you turn study materials into something that helps you learn. For example, a kinesthetic learner could go for a jog and listen to a podcast on the subject they are learning. A visual learner can find images and pictures on the subject they're learning about to help their mind see what they're learning to speak. An auditory learner can listen to music or create songs out of what they're learning. Logical learners can ask themselves questions like, how does this connect to what I know? Or how does what I'm learning fit into the subject being studied? For example, if you're learning a martial art, doing the horse stance is boring, but a logical learner will be more motivated when they understand how it's foundational for all punches and kicks. Verbal learners can read subject matter from authors they like or write about what they're learning. Social learners will do well with study groups. Solitary learners need to find a space where they can be alone. 4. Talk to yourself. This may not be as practical a habit as the previous 3, but it sure is powerful. There are some fairly strong scientific benefits of talking to yourself out loud, according to University of Illinois psychologist Brian Ross. When reading study materials, ask yourself questions like, what does what I read actually mean, or how does this connect with information in the paragraph above? And then answering yourself out loud can potentially increase how much you learn by 3 times the amount of normal studying. Talking aloud activates your temporal lobes more fully. Temporal lobes are on the left and right side of your brain, and they help you understand positioning, but are also involved in understanding ideas. This technique is very powerful, but obviously not always practical. Chatting to yourself in the school or college library might get you more than a few concerned glances. But if you make this method work for you, you'll start to see your powers of understanding increase. 5. Take your time while studying. Before we talk about organizing study time, we need to talk about the act of studying itself, as there are some seriously damaging misconceptions about reading, which is an integral part of studying. When you sit down to study, it can be tempting to read as quickly as you can and scribble notes down furiously. This is a huge mistake. The best way to study is to read slowly and pay attention to every word. Yes, this probably doesn't sound great, but in the long run, you're saving time. Reading carefully now means you don't have to waste time constantly rereading later. Studying fast is a hangover from speed reading, which unfortunately is a myth. Very few people can read faster than 400 words per minute, and even the ones that can barely understand a word they're reading. This is the total opposite of what you want when studying. It can be extremely hard to sit down and carefully read a textbook, but it will save you a lot of time in the long run. 6. Develop effective time management skills. Studying is a bit like exercise. A little every day is better than running a marathon once a month. Cramming study into a few hours once a week is tempting. But as you get more advanced, the cognitive loads on your brain increase to the point where this isn't feasible any longer. It's far better to set a chunk of time in the day that you devote to studying. This doesn't have to be hours. You could start with 30 minutes a day and work your way up from there, depending on how much study time you need. Turning studying into a part of your daily routine turns it into a habit, which increases the likelihood of you spending enough time learning everything you need to succeed. To take action on this idea, we recommend using the 7-minute habit to plan your day that we talked about in a recent video. 7. Embrace the growth mindset. The growth mindset is the Swiss Army knife of psychological tools and great for nearly any problem, but it's fantastic for studying. The growth mindset's most basic principle is that our abilities aren't fixed. If you put the effort in, you can always get better at something. This also applies to learning any subject. If you fundamentally believe that it doesn't matter how much you study, as it won't make a difference, guess what happens? You don't study, because what's the point? With this kind of belief, you've convinced your subconscious it would be a waste of energy. A growth mindset actually embraces the challenge. Are you struggling to learn? Good! You're stretching your abilities, and because of that, you're going to get a little smarter. Keep doing this week in and week out until your brain gets a lot smarter and you start understanding things that stumped you before, just like going to the gym with your muscles. Don't believe the growth mindset is real? You learned to read, speak a language or two, maybe drive a car, or use a knife and fork, didn't you? None of these are natural abilities, but they require a ton of effort to learn. But now you can do these things almost without thinking. Studying is something we all have to do, and to excel at anything in life requires some discipline and consistent effort. So if you'd like to learn more about this topic, then be sure to watch our videos about the 15 SMART goals examples for students. And if you enjoyed the content of this video, then please help us out by taking a few seconds to hit the like button and then subscribe to our channel.